Afternoon, everyone. I want to talk to you guys about the concept of overtime pay. But first, let's talk about net pay versus gross pay. So imagine you have a job and you're really happy and you have a smile on your face because you're about to get paid. You've clocked in all these hours on the time clock. And then you find out when you get your paycheck, that there's all this money missing. You're asking yourself, who is FICA? Like Medicare, Social Security, that's the payroll taxes that's gone. That sneaks through the net, and all that's left over is this fish, which is a metaphor for your paycheck and what you have to pay for your rent and put gas in your car or whatever, buy food. So that is net pay, which is left over in the net. It's the fish. Net pay. But gross pay, now you're like, that is gross. All this money's gone. I'm sad. Now, gross, like, oh, that's disgusting. It's spelled Grose, not Gross, but it's, I think, a decent visualization to remember gross versus net. Well, we're focusing just on gross pay right now, just to keep it simple. And Jenny works at a law office and gets paid $12.50 an hour. She wants to earn $400 gross pay for the week. How many hours does she need to work to earn $400? Well, straight pay, which is going to be, she wants $400. That's going to be equal to the hourly rate, which we know is $12.50. $12.50 an hour times hour. So all we have to do to calculate that is isolate the h, get h by itself, which is hours. So divide both sides by 1250. And of course, in the real world, just got 400 divided by 1250. You're not going to necessarily take a pencil to paper and do these algebraic steps, but that's what you're doing mentally in your head. And that's really the only real point to that as far as a real world application, especially for a relatively simple problem. Let's pull up our calculator and take 400 divided by 1250, and that equals 32, and make sure that makes sense. 32 times 1250 equals $400. All right, so we checked it. The answer is 32 hours. But what if instead of $400, she wanted 612. Let me get that a little bit bigger here. She wanted $612.50. $612.50. How many hours would she need to work to do that? Okay. So, what if we deployed the same logic and said, well, $612.50 is equal to 12.50 an hour. And then, of course, we're just going to divide $612.50 by 12.50. 612.5 divided by 12.5 is 49 hours. So that would equal 49. But 49 is the same thing as 40 plus 9. And 40 sticks out because just like there's the thorny political issue of payroll taxes, there's also this thing called overtime. And For better or for worse, that's thanks to the labor movement in the United States and other liberal democracies, quote unquote, like the United Kingdom, etc. Anyway, we have overtime, and generally the rule is if you work over even a second over 40 hours, then your employer has to pay you time and a half. That's a mixed fraction, as in 1.5, which could be rewritten as either 1.5 or as 3/2, because 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3, or just, hey, 1/2 is 0.5, so that's 1.5. Either way, if we take the $12.50 that she's normally getting paid and multiply that by 1.5, which is 1 plus 0.5, so that's 50% of 12.50. So 12.50 times 1 is obviously $12.50. And then 12.50 times 0.5, that's half of 12.50. So half of 12 is 6, and half of 50 is 25. And then that would give us 18.75 when we add 12.50. And then did it here earlier. Had a little production snafu, so I redid this video. Anyway, we could also say, well, 3/2, so that's 12.50 times 3 divided by 2, and 12 times 3 is 36. 50 cents times 3 is $1.50, so that's 37.50 divided by 2, and then half of 37, well, 37 is 30 plus 7, so half of 30 is 15, half of 7 is 3.5, so that's 18.5, half of 50 is 25, half of 50 cents is 25 cents, so that's 18.75. Okay. 18.75 would be the rate, and then that opens the door to this thing called a piecewise function. The reason why you would do a piecewise function is that would be your guide and how you would graph the relationship and how much money you can earn given how many hours you work. So it means we have more than one function. So that's what piecewise really means, is that, hey, we have two different functions in this case. So f of h, not f of x, because h stands for hours and it's just the input, equals, okay, f of h, sorry, it's going to be 12.50 an hour if h is less than or equal to 40. Now, by that same logic, would it stand to reason? Then it would be 18.75. Put dollar signs in here for fun. An hour if h is greater than 40, and that's just greater. Nope, that's too simple. That does not really grapple with the complexity. So let's do a little spreadsheet to show you what I mean. And then on the spreadsheet, I decided to go from 0 to 100. And the reason being is that if you go back to our calculator and we go, well, 24 hours in a day and 7 days a week, so 24 times 7 is 168 hours. Well, the average worker before the labor union really took labor movement took off in the United States in factories during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, was according to some estimates, somewhere around 100 hours. So 100 hours of work a week. So minus 100, that's 68 hours you had to yourself during the week. And then 68 divided by 7 days a week means you had 9.7142 hours, but 9 hours, and it was almost 3/4 of an hour, but 9 minus 9, and then we multiply that by 60 because 60 minutes in an hour. It's just about 42 minutes. So 9 hours and a little over 42 minutes is what you had to yourself. And just think about the fact that today a lot of medical doctors and health professionals will recommend that folks get at least 8 hours of sleep a day or between 6 and 8. So maybe you have time for 6 hours a day of sleep every day for 7 days a week as you go into work. But that just leaves you about 3 hours between commuting between work and back, and then whatever time you have at work for your lunch, and then getting home and eating. And you probably have just about zero leisure time under that scenario. So I'm going to say 100 hours is pretty draconian, but I'm not going to go beyond that. Anything beyond 100 is just silly. I think even the most demanding employer is probably not going to have you work more than 100 hours. Probably not. Maybe if you're an entrepreneur and it's your own company, you'll do that. I don't know. Anyway, next thing, we have the hours plotted, and then we have 1250 for the rate, and then 1850 or 1875 for the rate above 40 hours, and then 40.01 just like just a little hair over 40 hours, and you're going to get that. But see, does this make sense? Because according to this, if I take that hourly rate of $18.75 times just a smidgen above 40 hours, and I'm getting $750.19. That's a huge difference. So I take, and 40 times 1250, that makes sense because 40 times 12.5 equals 500, right? But that 500, okay, if we make that negative and then add that to the 750 and 19 cents, that's $250.19 of premium. By just working a shadow of a second, you've earned $250.19. So you better make sure you wait just half a second past 40 hours before you clock out at the end of the day on that last day of the shift. No, but that's not how it works. That's not how it works. What we're doing is we're taking the $500 and we're adding it to that. That's why the figure wouldn't make any sense. So let's go back and do a little algebra first. So we were looking at what it would be if we had $612 instead of $400, we want to solve for $612. And then we did this silly thing where we found 49 hours and we realized that's not it. So what we're going to do for the real algebra, we're still going to solve for $612. So this is kind of like y equals mx plus b, because b in this case would be the $500. So $612 equals mx, which would be 18. That's our rate. That's kind of like our slope. It is our slope, 18.75 an hour plus $500. So now when we do that, we're going to subtract 500 on both sides. So 612 minus 500 that's pretty easy, right? That's just $112. So $112, oh, and 50 cents, by the way. So $612.50 minus 500 is $112.50 equal to 18.75 an hour. And then obviously at that point, we're just going to divide both sides by 18.75. And see what we get. Calculator. So we take 100, well, let's just double check, right? $612.50 minus 500 equals $112.50 divided by 18.75 is 6 hours. Okay, so let's go to our little calculator. And then look over here. We need to fix this spreadsheet because there's, like I said, we are already making the $612 and well above that by waiting half a second past the 40-hour time limit. And that's not how that works. Not at all. And 46 hours, we're getting $826.50. So, it's definitely a better situation for the worker as far as the overtime, because if we're looking at 46 hours versus 49 hours, that's 3 hours you now have to yourself. You only had to work 46 hours as opposed to 49 hours, so it's a difference of 3 hours, but it's not quite as good as this scenario. So first, let's just graph this a little bit. Graph this. So I'm going to highlight the field for hours. And then I'm going to hold on to the control key. Then I'm going to highlight two different outputs on this. That's why you would do a piecewise function on this. And if you graph it, you'll have two different functions. And then I'm going to go to insert. And then, okay. And then I find this the most aesthetically pleasing here. Okay. So I like that graph. It's pretty. It's just not accurate because the table that it's based off of is not accurate. And we need to fix two different things here. We need to, I'm going to put that a little bit higher up. Anyway, we need to fix the input, which is our independent variable, hours, and our dependent variable as well. Okay, so this is fine. Everything on this 500 and between 0 and 500 is fine. It's just between 750.19 down is wrong. So first of all, it's not 40.01, it's 0.01. And then it's 1. And then we'd go all the way down to 60 because 60 plus 40 is 100, so that makes sense. And then for our dependent variable for 19 cents, remember that's just plus 500. Plus 500, and then we'll drag that formula down. Okay, sometimes Excel can be a little pesky if you make a little mistake, but the calculation is 0.01 times shift 8. That's 19 cents plus 500. Okay. And then now I'm going to drag the formula down. There we go. Okay, so the max here, at our idea that you wouldn't work more than 100 hours a week, would be $1,606.25. And to check it for accuracy, yep, wait. Sure, at 6 hours should be making $612. Let's see what's going on. 519. Okay, one more time to fix that. Okay. There we go. Now we know it's right. I'd made a mistake when I was fixing this because it was one cell below. So that's why this is a good demonstration why it's important to know what you're doing as far as what the number should be. And now it makes sense to check it for accuracy because 6 times 1875 plus 500 we know is $612. And then that means for overtime between $500.19 all the way up to $1,625. Okay. And then the graph is more accurate too. And you see that just like we were talking about the idea that the $500 was the y-intercept, as in y equals mx plus b, and b was the $500. You also see that concept mirrored on our graph right over here. And you can almost think of that like a little triangle here. Not sure how much money you could potentially make versus this area down here below the $500 mark. And see, that's what connects it between 40 and then just above 40, you're making that over time. So that's how that would work. And going back to the piecewise function real quick as our last thing. What we would do to make this more accurate for the function is we would put in would be 1875 an hour, but it's times hour minus 40. So for like 46 hours,